Hello, and welcome to the 2021-2022 Transition Attainment Record, otherwise known as the TAR, training presented by the Kentucky Department of Education. I am Jason Howard, and I will be presenting the training today on behalf of our vendor, the University of Kentucky, and the Kentucky Department of Education. Now, before we begin, it is important to note that we are in a transition year with the alternate assessment. So the first thing you will notice is that the name has changed. The alternate K-Prep is now known as the Alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, and that is to reflect the changes of all state tests. Further, the TAR is transitioning as well. If a student was a sophomore in 2020 or before, the benchmarks mentioned in this training do apply to the TAR that student will take. Now, sometime this fall or winter, we will convene a group to set new benchmarks on the new TAR, which will apply to any student that was a sophomore in 2021 or later. Now, once those benchmarks are established, they will be communicated to the field through the DAC emails, alternate emails, and likely DAC webcasts and other mediums we use to disseminate information. However, keep in mind throughout this training that this is a transition year, and when benchmarks are mentioned, they absolutely are correct for students that were sophomores in 2020 or before, and that they may or may not be correct for students that were sophomores in 2021 or after. So those meetings have not been convened yet to set those benchmarks, but they will be soon. And with that, let's get underway. So let's talk about standards assessed. Last year, the TAR would have been based on former Kentucky content standards. Now, beginning in 2021-2022 school year, students in 11th grade taking the TAR for the first time will be taking a version of the TAR written to the new Kentucky academic standards and targets. So students in 12th or 14th grade who did not meet benchmark in 2021 and who do not have an assigned graduation code, those students will take the TAR written to the previous Kentucky academic assessment standards. Now, in 2022-2023, students in 11th and 12th grade taking the TAR will take the assessment based on new standards, and only students taking the TAR in grade 14 will take the assessment based on previous standards. So let's talk about the TAR and what it is. So it isn't a standard assessment where a student sits down and interacts with a testing form. Instead, it is a rating scale or checklist where the educational team reviews student performance and assesses specified content using the checklist. This rating will be used to represent the academic portion of post-secondary readiness at the high school level. So now let's talk about grade level requirements. The TAR is required to be administered at grade 11. So the purpose for this is that it's to be administered in place of the ACT for students on Kentucky's alternate assessment track. Now, just like the ACT, the TAR assesses students in reading, math, and science. The items on the TAR are linked to grade level content standards. So the following benchmarks have been set, but special note here. New benchmarks will be set for reading and math in 2022. Currently, the benchmarks for the TAR are a 19 in reading, a 16 in math, and a 16 in science. But, as previously noted, this may change when new benchmarks are set in 2022. Now, if a student does not meet benchmark at grade 11, that student can take the TAR again at grade 12. The benchmarks remain the same, however. Now, I wish to note once again, in 2022, we will convene a group to establish new benchmarks in reading and mathematics. Currently, these are the established benchmarks. Now, any student who participates in the TAR at grade 12 must first be registered in the Student Registration Database, or the SRD, by the DAC, DOS, or someone with district level access. The DAC, DOS, or district level administrator should contact myself, Jason Howard, at jason.howard@education.ky.gov and ask to have the grade 12 TAR open for score entry at the SRD. Now let's focus on the TAR at grade 14. If a student does not meet benchmark at grade 11 or grade 12, that student can take the TAR again at grade 14. The benchmarks remain the same, however. I wish to note once again, in 2022, we will convene a group to establish new benchmarks in reading and mathematics. Currently, these are the established benchmarks. Just as with students taking the TAR in grade 12, Any student who participates in the TAR at grade 14 must be registered in the Student Registration Database, or the SRD, by the DAC, DOS, or someone with district level access. The DAC, DOS, or district level administrator should contact myself, Jason Howard, at jason.howard@education.ky.gov and ask to have the grade 14 TAR open for score entry in the SRD. Now let's talk about test security. So please take note that while the TAR is not a standard multiple choice assessment, it is considered a state assessment, and as a result, it's considered secure testing material. It is okay to know the concepts and teach the concepts that are on the TAR. However, it is never okay to reproduce the TAR. It is never okay to share the items on the TAR with anyone not involved in the administration of the TAR, or to use specific test items from the TAR with students during instruction. So let's shift to timelines. If you're watching this training, it means it is now September 27th, 2021 or later, and therefore the TAR is now open. The TAR will remain open until May 27th, 2022. This training and the quiz must be completed before administering the TAR, and all scores need to be submitted no later than June 3rd, 2022. That is a firm deadline. To access the TAR, you will need to log into the online training system, or the OTS, and go to the Transition Attainment Records tab under the Teacher tool. It will not appear until you have completed the quiz. Now let's talk about administration. So the TAR administration is conducted by the student's educational team, which includes personnel familiar with the student and the student's work. The team may include the student's special education teacher, general education teachers from collaborative classrooms, and related service providers and paraprofessionals. Paraprofessionals can provide information but may not score the TAR assessment. Now let's talk about getting started. So once you've taken the quiz, once the one certified team leader will be responsible for entering the scores in the SRD. However, all team members participating must complete the administration code training and the inclusion of special populations training. The lead team member will complete the online training for the TAR in the OTS and must pass the quiz with an 80% or better. Now together, the team should review all the content standards assessed and the sources and documentations of the student's work. Let's talk about team agreement. So the scoring of the TAR is done by the educational team associated with the student. The team should work together to determine scores on each item. KDE and UK have provided guidance in the TAR administration guide on how to reach consensus. When consensus cannot be agreed upon, the lowest rating considered must be used for scoring purposes. So if you have 4 team members, 3 of which think item is a 2, and 1 team member thinks it's a 1, and you cannot come to a consensus to rate it either a 1 or 2, then the 1 must be used. Now let's talk about steps to completing the TAR. So you complete the student interview and then you proceed with the assessment. The team as a group must respond to every item. If there is no source of data for student performance on an item, the team must design an assessment item per the directions in the TAR administration guide on pages 9 and 10. Review the TAR assessment to ensure that all items are completed. Now, as far as documentation, the TAR form has a column where the lead team member will indicate the source of documentation for the student's work performance. The sources of documentation include the student's IOP or working folder, due process folder, classroom working folder, etc. Other sources of documentation may be noted in the space provided. It may be noted as well that if there is no existing documentation and an assessment has been designed in its place. Now let's talk about the rating of student performance. So rating student performance should be established by the team with a common understanding of the items, the standards the items are assessing, and the scale on how the items will be scored. It is important that all accommodations are followed for the TAR. So providing a means for the student to use his or her modality of communication to demonstrate skills is vital. This can be pointing, eye gaze boards, or any number of communication devices. Let's discuss the item rating scale. So the item rating scale for the TAR is a simple 3-point scale. 0 is used when the student demonstrates no skill towards understanding the standard. A 1 is used when a student is moving towards understanding a standard but needs to be prompted in order to do so. And a 2 is used when a student fully understands the standard and can independently address it without the need of prompting whatsoever. And so let's discuss what a sample rating of a 1 looks like. So on this slide, you will see an example of a 2 rating, which is the highest rating available on the TAR. So if a student is able to identify the central idea of a text, is the item being discussed, and the observation is the student independently scored an 80% or higher on his or her class work sample for the reading standard and IEP monitoring. So the rating would be a 2. The documentation would be the IEP monitoring folder or the student working folder. Now let's discuss what a rating of a 1 looks like. So on this slide, you will see an example of a 1. And so a 1 would be the item. The student is able to identify the scale of a given graph or data of display. The observation. IEP data shows that the student could do this, but only with verbal prompting. So that would correlate to a rating of 1. The documentation would be the student's working folder. So let's discuss what a 0 looks like. So on this slide, you will see what a 0 rating would look like. This is the lowest possible score on the TAR. So the item, the student understands that a sailboat is powered by the wind in order to move forward. The observation, no previous observation had been made, so the team created an assessment activity. The assessment showed a boat on a lake with the question about what makes it move. The student was given 3 answer choices. The assessment also included 2 other items related to motion. The student did not answer any items correctly, even when given prompts. The rating would be a 0. The documentation would be the student's working folder. So let's do a quick review. So a quick review of what we covered and what is expected of you as you move forward to administer the TAR is as follows. First, you should review the TAR administration guide completely. It is linked in this PowerPoint and this training. 2, once you have reviewed the guide and this training, you should complete the quiz and receive your certification. Remember, you must score an 80% or better in order to complete the quiz. After you've done that, then you will need to download the TAR, which is under Teacher Tools tab in OTS. Now, this tab will not, the TAR will not appear until the quiz has been successfully completed, which means you've scored an 80% or better on the quiz. Then you will be able to see the TAR in the OTS. The next step is the ARC should complete the student interview next, and then lastly, the team convenes and rates the items for the TAR. So wrapping up, as a reminder, the TAR is open for administration from September 27th, 2021 to May 27th, 2022. When completing the TAR document, make sure all team members are listed. There is a firm deadline of June 3rd, 2022 for score entry in the student registration database, and this cannot be altered due to data reporting requirements for the state. So this concludes the TAR training for 2021-2022. I want to thank each of you for all that you do for the students of the Commonwealth and the student population for which you serve. Having 2 children of my own in Kentucky Public Schools and having worked in public schools at different levels and capacities, I know that the work is not always easy, but it is so deeply appreciated. The difference you make in the lives of your students each and every day is a cause for celebration. From the Kentucky Department of Education, from the Office of Assessment and Accountability, and from a fellow educator, and most importantly from a father, thank you for all that you do. If I can help in any way, please feel free to contact me. You can reach me at jason.howard@education.ky.gov via email, or you can reach me by phone at 502-564-4394, extension 4009. Good luck, and thank you once again.